I want to say welcome to the Herbalist. Zen, what's going on? How's
What's
everything?
going on? Grand Rising, bro. Grateful to be here.
Serious thing, man. Glad to have you
Yeah,
here.
man.
So, for years now, right? I've been hearing people speak about alkaline.
hmm
For those who are unaware, can you explain what alkaline is?
Sure. So alkaline, is the natural way of living. Some people just refer to the foods, but it's really an energy of organic and wild from nature, not created from actual synthetic changes that man has come in and made. So older foods, the older generational foods that are made from carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, these foods that we recognize as not being altered, they carry a certain nutrient density that really assimilates with humans on a high level. They provide the minerals that we're made up of on a high level. They're very nutrient rich. People know alkaline mainly recognized based off the pH, but that's, one indication of a food that is alkaline using the pH scale, which is really a representative of that combination I just discussed, the carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, seeing as how pH is potential of hydrogen, right? So the other, more important aspect of alkaline foods is that they oxygenate the blood, okay, which is, the root cause of diseases within the body, the deprivation of oxygen usually caused by mucus. So that chemistry is what we're naturally made up of, and those foods nourish our body and revitalize us in an amazing way. And we also consider, an organic, natural way of living to facilitate that lifestyle, as in like, refertilizing the soil with even, one's release and waste and whatnot, continuing that circadian rhythm lifestyle where you rise and set with the sun, don't eat after a certain time, water throughout, all the foundational fundamentals of organic living really supports what we truly experience as alkaline.
Can you elaborate more in regards to the importance of the blood having that oxygen?
Sure, absolutely, because I can't stress enough how that's the backbone, out of everything that we live, all the elements, minerals, on the table, when it comes to survival, we are talking about seconds with massive damage when we're deprived of oxygen, as we all know. And people would think that's just an issue when it comes to the lungs, but it's actually an issue where in every part of the body, because disease, was proven to be having one root cause, which is when acidity builds up in the body, acidosis, which is the inverse, the opposite of alkalinity, within the body. We notice that mucus, excess mucus, because of course there's good mucus, but there's pathogenic mucus as well too, that builds up and starts to deprive our cells of oxygen. And literally, that is the root cause of every issue that we end up seeing, manifesting within the body. If that first step didn't take place where the gut or, some other part of the body became compromised, which it usually begins in the gut and then spreads elsewhere, that deprivation of oxygen turns into all different types of diseases that we recognize today, which is why flooding the body with alkaline, oxygen rich herbs, iron rich herbs as well, which, iron carries the oxygen. Those two combinations alone have reversed such a wide range of disease within the people. Yeah, oxygen, literally, there's people reversing, cancer and all other types of illnesses. It's not only recognized in the alkaline ideology with the benefits of flooding the body with oxygen. There are doctors of, other naturopathic and holistic variety that use oxygen-rich treatments to fight disease all around the world. So it's pretty amazing. Dr. Otto Warburg even won a Nobel Prize for establishing that disease cannot survive in an alkaline, aka oxygen-rich environment within the body. So, Western medicine has acknowledged for a long time the power of oxygen and alkalinity as well too.
Why do you believe Dr. Sebi's alkaline diet is so famous?
There's two reasons why I see that to be reality. And the first one is that Dr. Sebi is the only holistic that, herbalist that I've seen, and is quite a bit more in his profession, that has gone before the Supreme Court and demonstrated that he has treated, aka reversed, every disease that we have on file known to man, from HIV to sickle cell to diabetes to cancer to you name it. This legend has shown the world that it's possible for the body to heal itself through the science that we reference as alkaline rich, or African biomineral cell food, which is the reference of us all coming from the mitochondrial Eve gene, which is why alkalinity works for all backgrounds, even though it's referenced as the African biomineral balance. And not just the fact that he proved this in court, but the other reason why I say it to be reality, the way in which he pure-heartedly went to give this information to the world. He didn't just try to, hoard the information, or, he literally, went to all whoever would listen, celebrities and, politicians, whoever he tried to talk to. He said, sharp, he named names and said people who you would think would be interested in trying to learn the truth, and put it out there for our people, but weren't. And I think because of that, because his integrity being, unwavering, and working to get the truth to the people, his message was delivered with a unique, impact and intensity that really resonates. And of course, in the social media era, it was a perfect storm for the world to learn about the power of what, the body can do on its own.
For those unaware, can you explain what insulin resistance is, right? And how insulin resistance can prevent a person from losing weight?
Sure. That's, unfortunately, there's a lot of, conflicting information as far as insulin resistance. When it's basic, just like, we discussed the other buildups within the body due to mucus, the same is true with insulin resistance. It's just that the pancreas, which is responsible for secreting the insulin into the bloodstream, it becomes inflamed. It becomes damaged. It becomes, irregular. And the zone that, is supposed to secrete the insulin actually becomes so inflamed and impacted that it's completely blocked up by mucus, and no insulin is getting into the bloodstream to regulate blood sugar and more. Most people believe that their body actually stopped producing the insulin, which isn't true. Levels may go down, but the pancreas just isn't actually able to release it due to the inflammation and the mucus, which is, of course, depriving the pancreas of oxygen. So by flooding, by cleansing, and why that might actually, stop someone from being able to lose weight is because, excess sugar, and being that the insulin is not being released into the bloodstream once the inflammation builds up, that excess sugar is going to be overly abundant and store in cells because it has no place to go, especially the way we consume sugar, really in all forms. I don't think people realize that pastas, breads, rice, potatoes, and much more break down into sugar within the body ultimately. So that combination, again, is a perfect storm in the worst way, for now the body not being able to lose weight, becoming extremely inflamed, and honestly a wide range of, from the eyesight going to joint pain and back pain and, addictions, as well as hormonal imbalance and mental health issues, have all been attributed to, diabetes, pre-diabetic, what we call that, which is all really at the root cause, in an issue because the insulin is not being released from the pancreas.
So a lot of people who struggle with weight, they run into a frustration because they believe they're eating properly and they're working out, but they're not losing weight. But the root cause is
Mucus and mucoid plaque, and building up in different parts of the body. So as we spoke in the case of the pancreas, not being able to secrete insulin, there's usually multiple compromised zones in the body. The first place where the plaque and the tar builds up in the body to create blockages is usually the colon, the digestive system, which is why, we always recommend somewhat of a full cleansing for your vital systems. The colon, kidney, liver, pancreas, and a few more, depending on the symptoms, can be all necessary to truly experience the results that people are looking for, which is why we recommend the Alkaline Foods Nutritional Guide to help the body reset its gut microbiome, because many people won't heal properly just because they're not able to absorb properly to then treat the zones of the body that now need the extra attention.
I'm glad you brought that up because I think it was Brother Layla Africa's book. He spoke about how when you're in such an unhealthy state, the body can't absorb the nutrients to make you healthy. So
No,
it's like you're in a bad zone.
danger
You know
zone.
what I'm saying?
And really most people are trapped there. There's a plaque layer that builds up in the colon. And if you're not looking to get into at least, long stretches of what we call clean alkaline foods, or with a lot of like fruits and veggies fresh in the mix, or straight raw fasting, that it's difficult to get these things removed from the body once we have decades. A lot of people got 20, 30
So
years
so
worth.
that's scary. So you can be taking these herbs and they do you no benefit if you're in such a healthy condition.
I wouldn't say no.
Yeah.
But it can be much less. You can be absorbing 20%, 30, 40% of what your body potentially could be utilizing, which, is frustrating. It is why a lot of people have like a seesaw. They get a little bit better and then they get worse. And because if they're not going to stay strict long enough for the body to begin to absorb better and fix the gut microbiome, it is going to be more difficult in many cases. But yeah, in a weak range of absorption. And yes, some aren't absorbing properly really anything at all, in the worst case scenario, but the average person, they're probably just absorbing, a good chunk less than they would like to. So you're not getting the best bang for your buck in the beginning, right? But the longer you stay focused and you cleanse things up with your eating, now everything is going to work a lot better. And that's a huge reason why I recommend sea moss first and foremost. No food helps the gut microbiome and adds minerals on the level that sea moss does. So it's a 2-for-1 powerhouse for your body.
For those watching, right, can you explain what are heavy metals and why is it so important to detox heavy metals from our bodies?
Sure. Yes. It's a misconception about the type of vitamins, as it's referred to commonly, that the body needs. Heavy metals are chemicals, many of which are synthetic, that don't belong in the body, along with other rock-like material, inorganic minerals, if we want to be technical, that the body can't break down, but are still in our food supply. People are Unfortunately, there's two forms of every, we know iron. There's iron you can knock somebody out with, and then there's iron that your body needs to deliver minerals into the blood. So the inorganic ones, believe it or not, are in the food supply, the kind that we can't break down.
Can you give us some examples before you move on?
Sure, absolutely. So iron has, for example, two forms. The kind that we need is iron fluorine, and then there's iron sulfates. Okay, ferrous sulfates, and that's the form that we can't break down. And you'll see that in other types of foods. What we would call, vitamins. And the reason why I say what we would call is because truthfully, they're actually just minerals, and in their whole form, right? But when we try to break them down and make a product that isolated and you can sell, now it's a vitamin, right? But not having the proper vitamin D in the wrong form, which is often marketed in a form that the body can't break down, inorganic forms of it. These are what build up as heavy metals that the body can't break down, of course, along with a lot of chemicals that are being put into the food supply as well too, that the body is again going to completely struggle to break down, some of which are known as forever chemicals, because we don't ever really expect the body to get these things out of it once certain levels build up, just like microplastics, which is another, nano-sized issue that is building up in our food supply, and now within the, even the placentas of newborn babies is finding heavy metals as well as microplastics that people are, of course, struggling to get out. So the reason why this is very dangerous is because we've seen an avalanche in my lifetime, 30 plus years of neurological disorders that did not really exist before these things became so common in the food. Autism is obviously up, 1,000-fold in our lifetime, as well as dementia is becoming a young person thing. It's not even just for old people anymore. So some really tragic direction that society is moving in. Of course, cancer as well too. Numbers skyrocketing and getting incredibly young, which is very alarming for the direction that we're headed. Considering the water supply alone, along with chemtrails and other things that we're being bombarded with on a regular basis, in conjunction with the radiation exposure that we're now all living with such off the charts levels of being normalized, it's really a perfect storm to see 70-80% cancer rates within our lifetime.
What what are some of the sources of radiation we're being exposed to for those unaware?
Sure, routers are everywhere. Of course, cell phone towers. The 5G is extra alarming because they need to be blanketed about 5 to 10 times as much as previous systems that we were using for cell phone towers, and that's a lot. That's everyone kind of having a microwave on top of them most of the time when you're in a city. That's the reality that we're living with right now. On top of, microwaves, everybody usually has anywhere between 2 to 4 to 7 devices in a room that is transmitting, myself included. There's really not much break from radiation exposure in a city nowadays. So
What are some things we can do to remove some of these metals from our body?
sure. So these metals that we gotta there's herbs for this, but fasting is the way. Things that are embedded deep in our tissues and all throughout our body, you need to activate what's called autophagy, cellular regeneration. Most people talk about ketosis a lot. It's pretty much the same thing, that we're activating. When your body gets a cut, things coagulate, skin, new form. You can activate that process without taking, a high level of physical damage. And that's what allows the body to now purge, decades worth of things that were in the cells. But again, being as how colons are usually compromised without the long stretches of 21, 30, 60 days of raw, uncooked foods, most people are not going to get the results that they want of releasing, being as how, you would have to eat just a high amount of like leafy greens, cilantros, your dandelions, callalus, amaranth greens, right? Arugulas, watercresses, kales. These things are highly anti-inflammatory, as well as, berries. Berries, another one that's really good for cleansing the blood, high in antioxidants. A lot of people love, aronia berry, blueberry, elderberry, etc. Anybody except cranberry, because that one's a hybrid. These things are, mushrooms, lion's mane, reishi, cordyceps. These tinctures are also very good for pulling heavy metals and restoring the neurons. But again, absorption, right? So that's why we always recommend people to fast to get the best results, because we could name a lot of tools that are good, but if you're, going to continue to eat the foods laced with these things, it's going to be an uphill battle. So besides the leafy greens and the herbs, I want to mention as well too, good for heavy metals. You have like guinea hen weed, anamu. You have herbs like muclay, holy thistle. You have herbs like blue vervain. We have herbs like Damiana. They're good for the nerves. They're good for, helping the body reset hormones, mental health, things that heavy metals throw off. Also, chaparral is a great blood cleansing herb. And of course, there's many more. Even having ginger, key lime, cayenne shots in the AM will be very good for anybody looking to, rid their body, help release more toxins in the blood over time, especially the more consistent you are with that.
I read numerous reports that claim, right? There have been studies, or studies have shown that regularly eating processed foods, including Takis, these chips, these kids, that's it, Takis.
Takis.
Takis may be linked to a higher risk of heart disease, cancer, and type 2 diabetes, right? They also said it irritates your stomach lining and causing gastritis. Is this true, or is this just like an online thing? And should kids avoid eating Takis and other spicy chips?
Such a great question, because processed snacks in general are way more dangerous than people realize. This is very true about Takis. I've watched multi-week story updates of distressed parents showing their, teenager or, even younger in the hospital, in writhing in pain. Even I saw a video of a few throwing up blood. I've also seen doctors, on YouTube talking about how they're seeing a huge influx of adults and children addicted to, Cheetos, Takis, and Pocky.
Addicted to chips?
Addicted. Can't go 2 days without a bag. Yeah, it's crazy. The food has people. I myself, coming from Brooklyn, the Bodega Central, NYC, I see children and adults weekly eating Takis at 7 a.m. Everywhere I go. So from my reference to, what I see in articles, I've read newspaper articles about how just in one city, Memphis, Tennessee, they had like 300 kids in 1 month in the hospital, attributed to overdoing this flaming chip sensation craze that, again, and these chemicals, one of the more recent studies I saw, I shared with the public as well, has tested one of the chemical dyes in Takis, a yellow dye that had the skin of the rats in the study becoming transparent, and the organs becoming visible, the bone structures becoming visible, for, while they applied this chemical to their skin. They didn't even inject it. They just like rubbed it on. And this is what it did. And these are the types of things, again, banned in several countries, across the world, 30, 40 plus countries. These things are illegal to serve people, but yet they dominate the food supply with the snacks, and also the breakfast cereals are heavily loaded with these artificial dyes as well as too. But these Takis have become the number one addiction tool, that people don't even realize that it's destroying the lining of the colon, and you can end up vomiting profusely, vomiting up blood. You can end up, really bad diarrhea, and people are ending up in the hospital as a result of these big indigestion issues.
Should parents be more proactive with keeping this away from their children?
Oh, 1000%. These processed snacks, they're all, not only are they, made with hybrid foods and GMO, they're not high quality ingredients from the base of the food, but then also if it's processed, there's so many healthier nature's candy snacks out there that our palates have been completely changed, and we don't taste foods the way they do, which is why we're so addicted to these sugary, chemically options. But that's not what nature intended for us to have. And now parents are having kids with diabetes at very alarming rates, because of these type of snacks. So I highly recommend parents to learn the long-term effects of the snacks that they allow their kids to have, and even looking at some of the canned foods, the Lunchables, and just if it's a quick option, it comes with a cost, because to process it, you need preservatives, you need chemicals, even processing, we don't want our food to be worked on already when it got to us, because that means it either lost nutrition or is, on next to no nutrition, being as how heavily, depending on how heavily they processed it and how much chemicals were used in that said process, which has become, the most common thing in most kitchens, unfortunately.
Why do you think diabetes has risen so much, and when did it start amongst children? Because I don't remember any child having diabetes when I was a kid.
Right? The actual name when we were, coming into this world was adult onset type 2 diabetes. It is not referred to as that any longer. It has been for a long time. It's just type 2 diabetes because it's not just for elderly. And the reason why is what we were just talking about. Ultra processed foods in this last 30 years, we went from consuming these things like not at all or 10% of the time to consuming ultra processed foods like 60, 70, 80% of the time. Most people don't really like to cook anymore. As crazy as that sounds to say, most people really don't like to cook anymore. And, takeout, being able to deliver it to your doorstep in the Uber Eats era, it just only gets worse progressively over time. Most people have been convinced that it's too expensive to eat healthy. They don't even think it's feasible for themselves, so they don't try. We're very much defeated from a knowledge and a nutritional info standpoint, and we don't know how to put a healthier lifestyle together in most cases. So being that is, most people are just going to opt for the most affordable, what's around, and the food deserts. I do have to hold our government accountable, because the FDA doesn't regulate, what goes into our food, even though they claim they do. And as well as they allow high levels of deprivation of nutritional foods in places where it could be accessible, but they're choosing to subsidize poisonous industries. Like, we put billions of taxpayer dollar into animal agriculture and fast food industries because they're not actually profitable. The cost of a Big Mac is actually the cost of the Big Mac after billions of taxpayer dollars get flooded into that industry to offset the overly expensive costs. So they're not even profitable industries, and most people don't know that. So once we allocate resources properly and stop allowing, profit over people, which is what's created this situation, sugar is a poison, holds no nutritional value. About 60, 70 years ago, peddled out really misleading studies to convince the world that it was okay to allow this drug to be consumed more and more. Now the average American consumes over 160 pounds of sugar per person annually.
That's crazy,
It's very terrifying. There's a lot of documentaries about stuff like this. The numbers keep me up. So I encourage people to just get educated and understand what they're putting in their body and why it's important to take breaks from these foods and snacks and things like that. We can't just eat what we want whenever we want.
Hey, can you tell me what is Ozempic?
Sure. Ozempic is an actual diabetes. It's a drug that was approved to be used in the market, FDA approved for diabetes support, that was then turned and marketed as a weight loss drug. And that doesn't really sound like commonsensical, but because this drug slows down the way a body breaks down certain hormones that are flowing, it now slows down the way the stomach breaks down food. And people are losing weight with this drug, but it has us, because your stomach is not breaking down food as much, so you're going to be fuller much longer. And it sounds like a hack, but in actuality it's extremely dangerous, because as usual you can't control a situation like that. And we have seen thousands of lawsuits that have literally had people's stomachs stop working, deactivated stomachs, so where they're now vomiting up week-old food, 2-week-old food, having to get emergency surgery, as well as it comes with its own black box warnings about possible cancer, causing thyroid cancer, as well as a slew of other side effects that I'm very surprised that people are willing to risk for something that will just help them to quote unquote lose weight. But the longer that I pay attention, I continue to see more side effects being taken to court for Ozempic, Wegovy. There's actually like a chain of, it's an injectable, drug that's supposed to regulate, production of certain hormone that's going to stop the stomach from breaking down food, which, it's, again, sounds like a good idea to slow down the metabolism, but not when you can't control it and then your stomach stops working completely.
That's the thing I don't understand, because it seems like a recipe for disaster. You're using this thing to lose weight, but you haven't created a system to keep weight off. So it's like, I take this thing, right? And I haven't changed my relationship to food. I don't have a consistent or sustainable workout schedule. So it's like, what's the difference between that? What's the thing when they staple your stomach?
I was literally gonna say that's what comes to mind when you bring that up, and it needs to be addressed because they act like you do learn a bit about having to eat better in order to get that stomach staple surgery, but they really don't. It's like it might as well be a 15-minute crash course type of thing that they put people through, and they expect them to now have enough, information to just regulate their eating. And I've seen countless Americans end up over just as large as they were before the surgery, again, even with the stomach stapled, because of the fact that their relationship with food didn't change at all.
I've only seen one person maintain the weight after the surgery personally.
Yeah.
And I know a lot of people that got the surgery done, but everyone else is back to square one. Every single person.
Tragic. And like you said, it comes from the lack of not anyone truly understanding what a healthy lifestyle looks like. Of course, there's a ton of misinformation at this point in 2024. But when you do your own research and take it back, you really can peel it back. But unfortunately, drugs always seem to be the answer. And it's a drug that it really sets people up for failure, just like that weight loss surgery that people are undergoing. And literally, a lot of times the pre-existing conditions they had before end up so much worse because now, you don't have much room in your stomach and you're still addicted to these things. And so the only thing you ended up getting in your body now is poor quality foods and small doses of it. So you're more deficient and you're only putting things in your body that enhance those deficiencies and strip you of more minerals over time.
And there's another aspect I noticed too, the mental aspect. Not all people will put the weight back on. I've witnessed this, but for some I witnessed they're demoralized spiritually and mentally when they put the weight back on. They're in a worse mental state when they put the weight back on from the initial.
So true. It's incredibly, anytime you make a promise to yourself and you don't follow through with it, you're attacking your self-confidence. How you feel about yourself is going to go down over time, the more that happens. And to get committed to, getting healthy, realizing that you have, what the doctor usually says is more of a life-threatening, direction that you're heading into with your weight when it comes to those type of surgeries or these drugs that they're recommending. And, to then end up literally back where you were after an entire ordeal like that, it's like a massive everyday lie for months or years, all coming down on you at once, or building up more and more, playing on the psyche exponentially over time. Most people in general are already their own worst critic. When it comes to the inner thoughts, most of them tend to be negative, and it's just a perfect storm to make it so much worse when your body ends up just back in that state, like you said, where it started, and you don't have any answers now because you did what you thought was going to be the one thing. So it's only natural that, depression can come in heavily at that point, being as how you don't really know what a real option is going to be. And most people don't even think, that a lot of people, they lament healthy foods so much because of their sugar and parasite, heavy influxes, that they think that they rather not even be here than to eat fruits and vegetables. I've been, told by some people or seen many people online with this stance, which is, of course, the most truly demoralizing place you can pretty much end up when it comes to nutrition, right? So
Why do so many people still feel hungry after eating a large meal?
So we touched on this slightly when I mentioned that the plaque and tar, every time we eat anything, including alkaline foods, a certain amount of residue is going to build up in the colon every bite. And that's why, of course, fried foods and certain things are worse than other things like fresh fruit, right? But everything does leave some residue. And being is how we never detox, most people, we already covered how they have a plaque that doesn't allow them to absorb nutrients properly. And in many cases, their gut microbiome is so out of alignment, they're barely absorbing any nutrition at all. Now, that aspect, in conjunction with the fact of we're supposed to let the ground, the soil rest, and we do not. This is, again, profits over people. It's derived from greed. And when we don't let the soil rest, we've created a situation of mineral depletion. Over the last 100 years, there's literally about 90% less nutrients in the same exact food that our great grandparents eat. If they ate a pumpkin and we ate a pumpkin today, we're getting about 10 times less nutrition from that pumpkin or any food, tomato, rice, bread, whatever it is. It's way less nutritionally dense than it was before. And chemtrails and all these new environmental toxins only make the situation worse more and more as time goes on. So you combine the plaque in the body with the fact that the foods don't have anywhere near the nutrition that they used to, and the fact that people are eating processed foods most of the time. That's a third heavy hitting reason why people are still hungry after. There's nothing there. There's nothing there. You're processing food that was already deficient at a high level in the first place, and then after you process it, you know what else we do to the food? We microwave it. On top of all that, which even restaurants are microwaving out here, in case people don't know, not just fast food joints. So, that there's no nutrition in food at that point, which is why it's so important to use your herbs. Okay, herbs and sea moss, these what we call alkaline supplements, are the backbone of why we're able to live the lifestyle that we can. They are exponentially more nutrient dense, more mineral rich than the foods that we're eating, especially the ones that come from other countries and aren't farmed, cultivated here in the United States with terrible regulations and pesticides. You want wild, harvested, nutrient-rich herbs that comes from soil in tropical environments that can literally flood your body with the minerals that we really don't get access to in the United States.
All right, for those unaware, can you explain what hormonal imbalance is?
Sure. Yes, hormones are, chemicals really that the body produces to regulate functions in the body. We give them different names, but essentially they all are just regulating different functions throughout. They affect tremendously what makes, men in some cases, like testosterone, and women with estrogen. And then there's, other aspects of hormones, like even things that are classified as vitamins are actually hormones in some cases, like vitamin D, okay, which of course regulates a ton of functions and boosts your immune response in the body, amongst several other things. Hormonal imbalance is just a natural side effect, symptom of the root cause of deprivation of oxygen that will now create deficiencies in the body. And the body is now not able to produce these hormones at the recommended needed or the daily amounts that the body needs to stay in proper alignment, to stay in circadian rhythm, to be able to rest properly, as well too. And there's, physical things that we can do, not just nutritional things that disrupt our hormonal balance as well too. not having a good relationship with nature, not breathing properly, grounding, fasting, sun gazing, speaking of vitamin D, all these things help regulate, hormones and stress chemicals within the body that has America's, health, mental health and physical health completely out of whack. We've seen, all different types of changes in the body type, the physique of the male and the physique of the female have completely changed compared to, a couple generations ago in some aspects, and it can be attributed to, these hormonal imbalances, of course, with several other, deficiencies in the body. But they all spell, disaster for our long-term overall health and wellness, especially when it comes to what we're seeing crises with fertility issues, among several other things that are tied to hormonal support, in the average person in America.
What are some ways someone can get their hormones in balance?
Besides alkaline foods, which is usually the base foundational tool. Sea moss is a great tool to help getting the biome in alignment. Working out helps, the body release blockages and chemicals. A lot of people don't break a sweat at all. And that's some just great tools. Also, of course, there's herbal support to help get your hormones in alignment while you're, eating the foods. Let the food be thy medicine. You have things like Damiana, that's great for that. You have things like blue vervain, that's good for that. There's red clover, there's mimosa sensitiva, that's good for that. And there's, many more herbs. Even I mentioned sea moss, is known as an aphrodisiac, and because it really helps get your reproductive in alignment, which is helping with your hormonal balance, which is why we see it help with infertility. We see it help with cycles, erectile dysfunction, impotence, prostate issues. We see it help with a lot of ladies have excess length of time on the cycle, clotting, cramping, mood swings, all change on a high CMOS alkaline fruit regimen. At least to start the day, they don't have to live on it, but at least breaking the fast properly can make a really big difference in your overall hormonal balance. So I recommend all of it, breaking a sweat, hydrating, getting your minerals from your teas, some of which I mentioned and more that you can research out there, as well as, sea moss has helped many as well too.
Unfortunately, for many of our brothers and sisters, their taste buds control their minds, right? How does one reverse that relationship so their mind controls their taste buds?
That is going to require exercising discipline on a high level, because the places and the foods, the markets that you may go to may have to change. The people that you're hanging out with, if they're gonna,
Social fire, that's going to change ASAP.
yes,
Naturally, too. You don't have to do that.
okay, right. As soon as you get on your health kick, a lot of times people will just pull back from the situation, and respectfully, let you do your thing, understanding that they're not ready at that time. The holidays and all these events, and I mean, it's just embedded it's so many aspects of the average person's life. Even work functions many times are going to tempt people. So it truly does require some planning. I don't go, I know what's in my fridge at all times. I keep a running tab. And if I'm getting out of work and I know I don't have enough of certain things, like right now I need some more mushrooms, I'm gonna make sure and stop off and get some mushrooms before I go home. It's not optional. Discipline, and that goes for everything, as well as my workout, as well, the other aspects that are gonna help, because if you're not disciplined with one thing, then your chances are you're not going to be disciplined with the other things. And when you start to be disciplined with more things, then it makes it easier for you to be disciplined with other things. So, even our, sex life, our workout life, our fitness life, our social life, our nutritional life, all these things, I think people are environmentally, the places you allow yourself to be, the things you allow in your home, in your personal space, even the things you listen to and the things you watch on TV, all affect us. Make you want to go try that new sandwich, that new whatever it is that they're promoting. You're constantly hit, and this plays on the psyche tremendously. So sea moss and mineral rich foods, the reason we have the cravings is because we're deficient, and sugar and these other things strip us of minerals even more the more we consume them, which is why you can never have enough soda or Kool-Aid, right? So flooding the body with the opposite, with the minerals. Take 10 tablespoons of sea moss a day. A lot of people don't know that the more sea moss you take, the more effective it's actually going to be. Some of the sickest people, in the Usha village that Dr. Sebi worked with people, they would take a cup of sea moss a day, 2 cups of sea moss in a day. I've seen testimonies and from his son as well too, talking about it. High amounts of sea moss being used, and it's an underutilized tool. That very rich mineral, combination, along with your body now absorbing other nutrients better, is going to help you break away. But you may have to go even further. Where people's sweet tooth is concerned and these snacking, you have to be proactive and find a healthier version of what you were already doing and keep upgrading until you're, really eating more, at least having some stretches where you can eat what we consider clean, an alkaline, strict, whole food, plant-based 21-day, 30-day cleanse. If you've never gotten there, then you probably need to keep progressing on your journey until you do get to that type of a cleansing mode. You don't have to live there, but at least experience that. And then you can decide what you want to reincorporate. But people don't begin, have the wherewithal to understand, oh, wow, there's an extremely high likelihood of me having cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, or a combination of several other diseases if I don't take these steps. So without the vision to understand why it's necessary, we think we're living healthy already. We think we're having a healthy lifestyle when we're really not. And that is what sets us up for not ever wanting to challenge ourselves to even go a day or 2 or 3 without these things that are really decimating us, long term. So, understanding the need to take breaks, flooding your body with minerals, and using fruit and some of the, natural tools that are healthier for you will really kill your sugar cravings over time. Changing those environments and not putting it there to tempt you in the house or with your friends and your social life, family, which we know can be challenging, is really important to change the discipline overall.
All right, you touched on this earlier, and I want to talk about constipation. It seems to be a epidemic, actually. People not going to the bathroom. What are some of the causes of constipation, and why is it so destructive to your body?
Yes, dehydration. We don't drink water, and we also don't eat fresh fruits and vegetables, which has the H3O2. Is a lot of water in that form as well too, as well as the epidemic of fried and processed. It's like the opposite. The things that are staples in people's lives are dehydrators. Even diuretics, which dehydrate as well too, like caffeine, which is obviously, I think, the number one import around the world. The billions of people that drink coffee per day, as well as just the average way the Americans start their food. If you look at from donuts to muffins to bagels to fast food or whatever, the body has a cycle. And it's looking for certain things in the AM when we rise, and we're not giving it to the body. So being as how residue is already.
Before you continue, can you explain people what the body's looking for in the AM before you continue?
Absolutely. The body's looking for hydration, like fresh fruits. Is very beneficial in the AM. Teas, mineral-rich teas, things like ginger, key lime shots, cayenne shots, things to help with the blood flow and the circulation. It's also looking for stretching, tapping, things that support your lymphatic system, deep breathing, aka diaphragmatic breathing. Even if it was a 15-minute routine, could potentially add years onto your life by doing these things, stretching, breathing, hydrating immediately, because the body is extremely dehydrated when it does rise up. So rising with the sun and not, at 10 or 12, also all these things play a part in how our systems get activated, and that circadian rhythm. Are we going to get into deep sleep and ever truly rest properly to actually rebuild and heal? It's all connected. That cycle, you're always affecting that cycle with the decisions. And, if the later you get up, the later you're going to stay up, right? So it's all connected. And yes, starting your days like that, never being in nature, grounding, sun gazing as well too. These things really disconnect us from our circadian rhythm. And again, all types of systems and hormones and stress chemicals can get, next thing you know, anxiety, constipation, mental health, all on the fritz for the average, American out here, compared to how the standards of living used to be for us. Now that constipation is particularly bad because like we said, it becomes a trap very easily. Once you start to have blockages in the colon, which is the tool that absorbs all the nutrition for the body, you're now eating and only building up more, which over time, once you hit that point and the parasites and plaque and tar is just, you're at a red zone on deficiency, on nutrient absorption, you're going to stay deficient and only get more deficient as time goes on. And it's only going to become more difficult for the body to eliminate at all, because again, there's no water present. It's just processed. It's just fried. It's just meat, and dairy, and a lot of, starches in, these cases. So that's a perfect storm for constipation. Our ancestors, or, human beings for the majority of time, they fasted. Their food was not always so abundant year round. We ate in season. There was a lot of things that were different than what the average person has been doing for the last 50 to 70 or so years, since the Industrial Revolution, and now things can be so easily accessible. It really changed everything, and now people don't even have a relationship with cleansing at all, which spring cleaning isn't just for the house, okay? The colon needs a break. Your digestive, we're not supposed to cook 365 days a year. We're not even really supposed to eat solids. Sometimes some which we usually only do it when we're sick, okay? But we should voluntarily do some fruits only, or some liquid only, some juicing, at least a couple of days per season, to allow our systems to take a break and reset. But instead, seed oils every single day being cooked, on top of the fact that every bite is already helping or hurting. And most people are on the hurting side. Constipation is probably the most common pre-existing condition that people are dealing with in America.
Any more tips for people out there struggling with constipation?
Absolutely. Of course, sea moss is my go-to guy.
See what?
Sea moss is my guy. So good for the colon. So good, which is why we brought it up earlier. Mucoid plaque. It helps break it down. We also brought up ginger, cayenne, key lime shots. Very good for the colon. But Cascata sagrada, aka sacred bark, senna leaf, many people know, as well as wormwood, as well as Cania fistula, a less known herb for the colon, bitterwood, which is also known as quassia or ombra grande. These are all more indigenous herbs that you can find that will really help restore the lining of the colon, break down the plaque within the colon, which is going to give you energy and help your mental health tremendously, being as how the gut really is the first brain and the first line of defense for your immune response. Most people are sick so often and always mucused up because their colon is compromised. Skin conditions can be, in most cases, attributed to the colon and or liver. contaminating the blood or having parasites and blockages within them. That's why some people just chronically have such high level skin conditions because of what's built up. And colorectal cancer, people are going for colonics, which, I see people have some really amazing results with it because our blockages are so bad. But I do encourage people to get into fasting more than relying on that, okay? Because it does pose risks pushing fluids into different zones that the bacteria does not belong going back into. Okay, so there are cons to it that don't really get any mention. I don't think people are aware of that. But in emergencies, I have seen colonics do life-saving work, so I have to give it that credit. But there's so much that you can do: saunas, a workout. Some people will have a movement as soon as
Walking.
they walking. Yes, okay, move. Sedentary disease, we're sitting way too much. All these things impact. You can also get something called like the squatty potty, which is going to raise your feet up when you're sitting on the toilet, so that way your colon isn't as impacted and there's not as much pressure on it, to allow for a more proper bowel movement, because we used to squat on the ground before we got all bougie out here with our toilets. But seriously, these things will make tremendous difference in the health of your colon, which will affect really the whole body overall over time.
Is it realistic to be healthy in an environment that is not your natural habitat, void of the foods and temperatures that are indigenous to your natural environment? And the reason I asked that question, I've really been on this epigenetics kick. And if things are stored in your DNA, right? I don't hear people speaking about not just the nutrients, but particular foods and how our body responds to it. And not saying other environments won't have those nutrients, but what if you're in an environment that doesn't have that nutrient? How would you respond?
Really phenomenal question. And something I have to, Dr. Sebi comes right to mind because it's at the cornerstone of the genetic predisposition reference that he has expounded upon tremendously. You're absolutely right. We do, based off our native indigenous regions, have a predisposition to certain foods affecting us one way versus other foods that are more natural to where we come from. The temperatures also as well do play a major part. There's certain animals, certain creatures that they'll die in a few days when you take them out of their natural environment. And it's something that does affect all, creatures on a level. Obviously some less than others, but we are like a fish out of water in certain situations. Now, really, I would have to acknowledge that health is kind of, I hate to say, like relative in 2024. We may not all consider that, being as how like electricity and, there's obviously variables and factors when it comes to worldwide, but let's just say for the United States reference, for now, that, when you're out of your zone and you can't access the foods that you need, it's 100% going to be, incredibly challenging to get your body the nutrients it needs, and the environment will make it harder on you. I've lived a life where the cold weather has tremendously affected my health. And like most of our, people in our community, our brothers and sisters, experience similar things I didn't know as well too. This is natural. On the contrast we see in Africa, where the natural environment is, everywhere, right? That, for example, with COVID, they had about like 10% less, the numbers in the United States, they had about 10% of those numbers in Africa, even though there's way more people in Africa. I mean, it's unbelievable to have 10% of the numbers that we had, which, is public record, okay, according to the CDC and the World Health Organization. That's where these things came from. So, we see now that our, vitamin D and, so many other aspects of our overall health that are foundational will make it so hard for people to even get over an upper respiratory infection, a cold, cough, flu. A lot of people live with nagging coughs and mucus all the time because of their environment and these food deserts. I mean, what are you going to do if there's no fresh produce in your town, which is the reality for some people. There are challenges, like that. So,
I think the food deserts has been, I don't like using this word, but normalized. People
yes,
don't even realize that they're in a food desert
correct.
because you grew up in an environment where these things aren't available.
You're right, which is why, people think health is, there's only but like they consider themselves healthy because they don't even see anything else. So you're like, oh, I'm healthy. I'm eating, bacon, egg, and cheese. Like, no,
It's a meal. The fact that you're even eating is considered healthy depending on your demographic.
exactly. Which is why I started off with well, it's kind of relative according to people, where you are and your standards for health. But, you can in 2024, for, a few dollars, get some really mineral rich herbs sent to you. There are farmers that do, affordable box food kits with like lettuce and tomatoes and cucumbers, fresh fruits and veggies. So it's not, what we would consider a common method, but there's tools and resources that we never had that you might want to look into if your local environment just doesn't have in a walking or less than an hour distance for you to go get these things. Although I do want to add that in most cities, people are not looking for their farmers markets. People are not looking for their international markets. The ones with the awnings out front and they have the carts, the stands, where there's either a, Caribbean or Hispanic or, an Asian, focus of foods where we can see more or natural stuff as opposed to the heavily processed markets where everything's in plastic or in a box already. You have a lot of access to things that they're going out their way to get these international foods in. And most people, if I ask them where they looked, they tell me the stores they passed to and from work and school. That means you didn't look. You didn't take a step off your path. So, you really do have to look because there are farmers markets, there are international markets, there are food co-ops. These are things that exist that most people don't know about, and they've changed my life. A lot of people say in New York City it's not there, and I'm like, everything's there in New York. Are you willing to take a 40-minute train ride to go grab what you need? Because I am, and that's really no time, to get the food that's gonna, save your life. If you got to even go 2 hours and you just plan out a trip once every 2 weeks and you grab what you need to grab, it's much better than really not having access and being in a true food desert where there's no way for you to reach it at all. So we really have to exhaust all options between the internet and our regions. But I do think that some people, depending on how bad their health is, need to consider moving or at least doing a retreat somewhere where they can get exposed to some thermal waters and a natural environment and a stress-free environment too, which is another huge environmental factor that is holding a lot of people's healing journey up.
A lot of times we've been really pushing mental health as I worked on my own mental health, spiritual health. So when we talk about physical health, it's just running, lifting, or whatever, right? We don't talk about, or I don't hear people speaking about enough stress management. In your observation, how much of a role does stress play in the health issues our people are experiencing?
A high amount. And it's tough to exactly, of course, place your finger on it and quantify. But I must say, there's a lot of mental health issues that stress is usually the culprit, according to the patients themselves, the people themselves, or of course diagnosed as well too, by the medical industry. A lot of people seem to have high cortisol, high adrenaline levels, struggle with, especially in now even the social media era, worrying about lifestyles and things that that we never did before. Our bodies are under stress from the screens, from the lights, from the radiation. There's just way more every decade. It gets harder to be low stress, no stress, stress free. It doesn't get any easier. And because of these things, we've seen really an epidemic in mental health issues. Insomnia, a lot of people are not sleeping properly. Anxiety, hyperventilation, ADD, ADHD, autism. We've seen cases where stress has caused neurological issues and people have not been able to function at the levels. When I say autism, the spectrum, okay? We've seen a range of issues, and even other, once stress triggers bad eating, okay, emotional eating, as we call it. It's all connected really on levels. Stress is the thing that puts people back in a state feeling like they need a coping mechanism. And I would say probably if you ask most people, they would say that's probably the number one reason why they feel like they can't even try to get started doing better, because giving up their drinking, giving up their coffee, you're going to see a different person. Okay. Stress wise, irritability wise, mood swing wise, removing a lot of these chemicals and drugs and foods that people are used to. So, you have the high stress level, a life that I dare say, even depressed about, and you want people to remove all their coping mechanisms. It's, some people's worst nightmare, to have to face that head on, which is why I always encourage people to start with the, gradual food changes and incorporating strong mental health support tools like the breathing, the stretching, the fitness, all really help your mental health. Sun gazing and grounding. These things literally decrease your cortisol and adrenaline levels like automatically, you think differently when you fast, when you work out, when you incorporate these things in.
And you process experiences differently.
Yes.
That allows you to reduce stress.
That's a phenomenal point, because my perspective
changes.
The way I see things now is really the top reason why I'm not stressed and I'm able to be Zen.
Because you're in the same environment. It's just
Same
you process
environment.
things differently,
So phenomenally spot on. Okay. And it's, I don't even, always articulate that. It needs to be said that the way you process differently is going to completely change the way you respond to things. And you're not going to feel stressed by things that you used to before as well, too, in many cases. So it doesn't always take a tremendous change to improve your health. It just takes changing the way we feel about things and the way we react to things, is going to shift, incorporating these things. Get in a sauna, do a cold plunge, do things that there's a long list of things that can really help. And once you start to do one thing that starts to make you feel better, it makes you want to do more things that make you start to feel better. And next thing you know, you're a, tree hugging, smoothie drinking, deep breathe meditating, sun basking, your whole lifestyle begins to mirror. And I mean, from my crystals to my, my accessory choices to the way that I dress, everything has been, intentional to facilitate a high vibration, a good energy, cotton and linen, you know what I mean? Things that help facilitate the good energy. So, that all, you can get much deeper, even to the things that, people think the music is not affecting their stress. They think the TV shows, watching the violence and watching the, all the reality fights and stuff like that, they think it's not affecting them, but it absolutely is, a subconscious and even on a conscious level as well too. So be mindful.
Can you elaborate more on how watching these shows and listening to music? Because I know certain music heightens my stress.
Absolutely.
Like I can literally, because I'm tuned in, so I can actually feel it. But for those watching, can you elaborate how watching things actually stresses them out?
Sure. These frequencies, everything is a frequency, and you will resonate with what you're surrounded by. It will make you subconsciously more likely to be violent, even if it's to you in a joking tone, in a playful tone, or some people it really manifests in their life because it goes from joking or a thought process to, becoming a real process that you're acting out when you lash out, because this is what's slowly becoming normalized. And happens so slowly that it can even be like a generational thing. I think that if you look at, the average teenager in a certain place, or in certain places, compared from now and 30 years ago, you see a big difference in the things they care about, the things they focus on, what's important to them based off what we're consuming media wise. It's really remarkable in the worst way, from what I'm seeing, that what we value, how we think it's okay to talk to each other, treat each other, love on ourselves, from the way we speak in general, just all of it has moved in a way where, words do carry thoughts, words, emotions, they all carry a frequency. Believe it or not, they've frozen it in water and tested these things based off the energy the words and the music has. It changes the chemical structure of the water. That's how powerful these frequencies are. People think sound can't do anything. It's physically changing you and mentally affecting you as well too. Okay, so these things are most definitely stressing us. If you want to look up Dr. Emoto's water experiment, to show you just how damaging it is, because we are water, and that same effect is happening to us in small doses based off what we're consuming, and it can't be underrated. Where conversely, in the contrast, people are saving themselves from mental hospitals, or other countries are using meditation, binaural beats. They're using nature to treat people. Now realizing we don't need pharmaceuticals, if we can just reconnect the body, because we have an electromagnetic field that's always being affected by the things around us. So emotions and thoughts, which of course the foods and everything affects, does affect your mental health, and will completely change when you change the, being intentional about it, and not just letting whatever is around you or whatever your friends are doing or whatever we've been told is the cool thing for us. It being seeing what it really does for you, to step away from that and listen to some good words, listen to some affirmations, listen to some motivational speaking instead, of some abundant sourcing, as opposed to from a place of scarcity or violence or whatever the case may be. Even though sad love songs sometimes, man, is not necessarily what you may need at the moment mentally to put you back in that place and that energy. It's not always necessarily the type of music you may think is the quote unquote bad guy. We just need to focus on, a lot of times we're focused on the past and worried about things we can't control. All of that is embedded into what we consume. So I'm very particular about what I listen to.